Inyan keser the nukva. What is the keser of nukva? Which means we were talking before that it comes down. That is the rotzin. That is the rotzin to go up to the Ein Sof. He's going to say, basically, these are the two levels of tefillah and Torah. Torah is the hamshocha that comes from Zoh into Malchus in a pnimius, and tefillah, that comes the hamshocha from chesed, the other part of the scale, which brings about the davening and the person to want to be included to Hashem. One is basically the hamshocha, and one is hamshocha to bring the ha'alah. So he says, what is keser the nukva? Zehu harotzin haposhut likolul be'ein sof baruch hu. This is the simple desire, will to be included in the blessed Ein Sof, l'mayla ma'chochma v'hasechel, which is beyond chochma and sechel. This is to turn to Hashem, or is going to say in the davening b'chol moedecha v'hasechel v'zohu b'chinas b'chol moedecha. And this is the level of b'chol moedecha, so that you should be able to give yourself totally over to Hashem. That hamshocha, that is the keser of Malchus, which gets the hamshocha, and we want sheyumshach rotzin v'keser zeh b'knesset Yisrael, in order that this rotzin, this keser, should be extended into neshamas Yisrael, in Knesset Yisrael. Zehu al yidei hamshocha milmayla la'oirer ha'alah. This comes through a hamshocha from above to arouse, to wake up this halah. So basically what we're saying is Malchus, which is Knesset Yisrael, has a rotzin poshut to be included in Hashem. So this rotzin and keser is the level of b'chol me'idecha that we all have in order to be included to Hashem. V'zehu inyan machzis hashekel truma l'Hashem. So this is the half a shekel, which is truma l'Hashem. What does truma mean? Truma means to separate Hashem. But he says this is the half a shekel which raises you to Hashem. Truma loshin armusa. It's a loshin of raising b'chinas ha'alah. It's a level of Allah. So it says kihinei af shachetzi chesed hanal nimshach b'umayla lemata. Although that the half of the chesed comes down from above to below, which means basically it's a hamshocha. Why are we saying it's a halah? Here we're saying that it's to elevate you, but it's really the chesed comes down milmayla lamata. So so in other words, even though it's an elevation, but you get the hamshocha milmayla to bring about the elevation. So he says, "Ach iker hamshochas kidei lasis hahalah." It says hamshochas. It with a sof over there. It's the grammar a little bit. Ach iker hamshochas. Hamshochas is kidei lalis hahalah. Las halah. That is in order to make the halah shubchinas keser the nukva chulu. Al kei nikra machzizeh. That's why we call the machzis truma laHashem armusa teres. Basically, what he's wants to answer here, because here we're calling it truma. Truma means to bring up, but here we're talking about hamshocha. We're talking about the two parts of chesed. They're both nimshach lamata. So why are you saying this is called a truma, an elevation? So he's saying because the purpose of this elevation of this hamshocha is to cause an elevation to bring the neshama up to a higher level. That's the level of keser of nukva. That's why this is called truma laHashem, even though you get it from above. But the purpose of the hamshocha from above is to bring about the elevation from below. it says elsewhere on the Posik, "V'nasati l'cha mahalchim." So it says in the Navi over there, in the Posik in Zechariah. So Hashem says to Zechariah that I'm going to give you amongst the Malachim bein ha'imdim ha'ela. Hashem says I'm going to give you Mahalchim. Mahalchim is inyan beis minei hiluch. So he says in a plural, you're going to be Mahalchim walking. What is the double? So he talks about over there the two types of going. Milmailo lemato are the Torah mitzvahs. So from Torah mitzvahs it comes down milmailo lemato. Milmato lemailo, that is the level of davening already. So you have the Torah mitzvahs, and then you also have milmato lemailo. So how does the milmato lemailo happen? It doesn't happen by itself. It also comes milmailo. In other words, for you to be able in the davening, for you to be able to go up milmato lemailo, you still need the koyach milmailo. V'hainu gam kein al yidei hamshachas meirin sobaruchu. This is also from Hashachas sobaruchu. When you're davening b'amiras kodesh, when you say the word kodesh, so even though that's your elevation, but how do you get your elevation? You get it when you say kodesh. Kodesh is the same value. It's Taf Yud. That's 410. That's the gematria of kodesh. So these are 410 nimin d'arich ampin. These are strands of arich ampin. So basically means shal yidei zeh dafke nimshach koyach habitl v'hiluch u'la'im shom. Dafke through this, that's from the other minor. Dafke through that extends the power for the bitl hiluch. V'zeu ki inyan beis machzis hashekel dekan. This is similar to the two machzis hashekel that we say over here. So he's going to go through this explanation now to explain that there is two isarusa de le'elos. There is two from above, basically hamshacha of above. One hamshacha from above is to mamash give you the hamshacha. That's in a level of pnimius. Another hamshacha from above is to cause you to want to be elevated. That's another isarusa de le'ela. One isarusa de le'ela comes down in a pnimius. The other isarusa de le'ela comes down in a makif. In a makif, in order to bring you to want to go up. Biaor hadvarim ha'elu. Yuvan al pi ha'yedua. So we'll understand it based on what it's known. We know that even the sarusa de le'ela, so you have the other way. So normally we say that you have a sarusa de letato, and that brings about the sarusa de le'ela. You start below, and you bring, and then Hashem responds to you. But it doesn't really start from below. For you to be able to start the Sarusa de Tato, you also need a Sarusa de Le'ela. So you have the Sarusa de Le'ela that follows the Sarusa de Tato, yes. But then you have an Sarusa de Le'ela to start your Sarusa de Tato. Bevur Beitz Chaim Sharman Umar. So he says, Ach, Kidei Sheyiye Koyach LaMakabel. Lahalisman, so that the recipient from the Sarusa de Le'ela, the recipient from Mad, should be able to be able to Mad. Ugam kein al yidei hamshacha milmaila tchila. That comes first through hamshacha from above. So for you to be able to be maila the man, to be mamshach the man, the commission comes to be siddur al posik al kulkul Yaakov. So he says, "V'hefresh ben beis hamshachas elu." So what's the difference between the two hamshachas? The hamshacha which comes after the sarusa de latato and the hamshacha that comes to bring about the sarusa de latato. What's the difference? The difference is how much it goes in you. The first hamshacha is makif. The second hamshacha is pnimis. Shebchin as hamshacha le'erev man. The hamshacha in order to arouse the mayim nuk v'de the sarusa de latato einay meir. Hello, makif al hamakabel. That only shines in a surrounding way on the recipient. The revelation has not yet reached in a inner way. He's going to say here he's going to give the example from the physical relationship from a man and a woman, is that you start off with a hug. That's a surrounding way of a connection. And then actually when you're intimate, then it comes down in the pneumius. So first we have a hug from the Eibishter, in other words, from Zoh. So that Zoh, that is to arouse that level of love so that you turn to Hashem, and then it comes in the pneumius. That's the inyan of Yemino Techavkeni, his right hand hugs me. Avol hamshochas mayim duchurim, but the extent when it comes down the masculine waters, that comes down in an inner way. That is like the seed extends, that is extends and is absorbed in the level of yisoid of the feminine. And that's not just a hug, that's already a pnimis. This is the two levels of the Hava Shekel. Those are the two extensions of these of the Mayim Duchurim. One, the level of the hug, which brings you to Esrusa Dile Tata to Hashem, and then the second one, the actual Hamshocha in Apnimis. Ki Shekel HaKodesh hu Hamshochas HaChochma. Shekel HaKodesh, we said Machzis HaShekel, Shekel HaKodesh. So what is the Shekel HaKodesh itself? That is the extension of Chochma B'Bchinas Yisoid Abba. That is from the level of Abba. Shenikra Kodesh, Shekel HaKodesh, Shelamayla B'Bchinas Kodesh B'Vav. L'Kadesh. Kodesh with a Vav means to be Mekadesh, to bring down Kedusha. But the level of Kodesh, that's a Mila B'Garmei, that means the level of Kodesh Elyon. So Zen Nimshach B'Bchinas Mishkal, Shekel HaKodesh comes into the level of Mishkal, B'Kaf Maznayim, comes into the way on a scale, Kaf Maznayim. Zehu Pirush Shekel HaKodesh. So this is the meaning of Shekel HaKodesh. It says Machzis HaShekel B'Shekel HaKodesh. So Shekel HaKodesh, Dainu, Shenimshach Chasodim Da'av Ve'eim B'Beis B'Chinas. That the level of Chesed, of Av Ve'eim, of Chochma, of Bina, is Nimshach B'Chinas Ohr Yoshor Ve'Ohr Chozer, in a way of direct and also a returning light, which means to be mamshich, to come down, but also to be mamshich, to bring up. That's to bring the halot, a returning. V'hainu hachetzi min hachasodim nimshach lenukva. Half of the chasodim comes to nukva, to malchus kadesha tuchal lahalis man b'chinas Ohr Chozer, so that it should be able to bring up the level of mayim nukvim in a returning water. Who inyan hamshachas mad. That is the idea of bringing down the mayim tchurim la'oider isarusul d'latato to rasul tato b'yimino techavkeni. That's the level, the right hand, the hug. That's the half of the shekel. V'zehu pirush machzis shekel truma l'Hashem. And this is what we say: a half a shekel raising you to Hashem, which means that half a shekel brings the Ohr Chozer, it brings you to raise. It brings you in a level to raise you. Shu Allah, which is Allah. And that's why, V'hainu, Shekondu b'machzis HaShekel, es ha'behema, the korbanis. So what did they buy with the half a shekel? They bought the korbanis. What is the korbanis? Shu Aliyah Shem Ban. Korbanos means that you elevate the level of ban, that you're mevarer at the level of ban, b'chinas malchus shenikra behema. That is the level of malchus. Malchus is called behema, the level of ban, because the gematria of ban is also 52. Behema is a gematria of 52, and that's the level of malchus. So that's the elevation. That's the keser of malchus that we said before, to elevate the malchus. Shekidei liyos aliyah zu. So in order for it to be Daliyah, Nimshach Tchila B'kinas Kesef. V'chasodi Machzis HaShekel, and Nimshach Nukva Chulu. That's the part that comes down in order to arouse and to help the Nukva go up to the higher level. So that's the Machzis HaShekel Truma Hashem, that raises you to Hashem, Derech Chayzer. Half of the chasodim comes in a straight way to Zoh. So from this comes the keser of Zoh from that level of chasodim. In Zoh itself, it comes down in 3 lines, corresponding to the Torah in general, basically, as we said before, how are you mamshich that Ohr Yoshor? That's the way to bring it down. From that level, that's the Mayim Duchurim that come after the Mayim Nukvin, after the first Machzis HaShekel, which brought about the Haloah, then it comes the Mad Achrama. Shemad Zen Nimshach Mebchinas Zol Lenukva. That comes from Zol Lenukva in the direct way, like he said before, like the Tipa Hamshocha in a Pnimis, Vu Nimshach maybe Bebchinas Pnimis, Abayz in a Pnimis. So, this is also the idea of Adiyeh the Achel Kurban. So now we have the second Ohr Yoshor, which is the similar to what the Zohar says. It's like the lion that consumes the korbanos. I guess first you bring up the korbanos and you make the haloah, you buy it from the chatzi shekel, you buy the korbanos, you bring it up to the mizbeach. But then you have the fire, the lion that comes down that consumes the korbanos. Shehu isarusa de le'ela, shela achar isarusa de l'tato. That's the isarusa de le'ela comes after isarusa de l'tato. Through the act of mitzvahs, mamshichim toisves oir bezor. You add additional bezor. V'gam nimshach b'chinus yichud zov v'nukva. It also brings down yichud zov v'nukva chulu. V'b'chinus yoshim chulu. That is a straight line. So basically, you have in avodah, you have the davening. The davening is the haloah. That's the machzis hashekel, which brings you up, and then you have the level of the 3 avodah, Torah avodah gnus chasodim. You have the avodah of mitzvahs to bring down. That's the fire that comes from above to bring down additional light, both in Zoh itself and in Zoh to use when it's union together with Nukva to be mamshich into Malchus, Zoh to Malchus and the Pnimis, as we said before. And this is also V'zeu Inyan V'samti Kad Koid Shim Shesayich. The word Kad Koid by me is in 2 separate yeah. In the Pasuk it's Kad Koid. So the Pasuk says, it talks about that, make your Shim Shesayich, your glass out of Kad Koid. What is exactly Kad Koid? So, what does it mean? So the Gemara, there's a different midrashim, the different types exactly. So there are 2 of them. One is Yoshvei, as they'll say in soon, Shoyam and Yoshvei. Those were two of the stones that the Kohen Gadol would carry with the Shoyam and the Yoshvei. So some say, there's 2 opinions. Some say that it's Shoyam, so Yoshvei. The Eibishter says it should be Katkoit, means Kidenu, it should be like both opinions. It is made out of Shoyam and out of Yoshvei. What is the idea of Shoyam and Yoshvei? It's the idea of milmailo lamato and milmato lamailo. These 2 avodas, isarusa de latata and isarusa de leila. And this is both the hamshochas. The shimshei sayich is referencing to the level of Zoh. That's the shemesh. Ki shemesh umogin Hashem elikim, to the level of Zoh. That's the level of kodesh, kuchabrichu, the level of Zoh. So that's the level of shimshei sayich. So that Zoh should get both, the half of Chesed to be Mamshech and a half of Chesed to make Allah. Let's see. So Kat Koid Shim Shesayich, based P'omim Chov Dalet, 2 times Chov Dalet, Kad Koid, Now, 2 times Chav Daled is 2/3 of 72. 72 is the Shem Ab, is 72, and you have 24 and 20. Doesn't say what the other part is, but Beis Pom Chav Daled B'chinas Kad Achas Shlish the Shem Ab Nimshach Lezo. So from the level of the Shem Ab, which is also from Olam HaToyu, that extends to Zo. B'chinas Kad Achas LeNukva, and one goes to Nukva. So one goes to Zo as Amshocha Yosher, one goes to Nukva as a law. Then B'chinas Yosher V'Chayzer, and that's Yosher V'Chayzer. Kinoida me'inyan Shoyim V'Yoshvei, as it's known from the matter of Shoyim V'Yoshvei, which there is the issue what is exactly Kad the Koid is, and the Eibishter said the Tzorich Li is based on B'chinas Kideinu Chulu, should be like both. All right. So it says be'emes ho b'ho talya. It hinges one on the other, which means depending about how much you have the hamshach of Torah mitzvahs, that's how much you have the aliyah. The erech eisek haTorah mitzvahs shu b'chinas machzis hanex na'ashekel ha'nimshach b'chinas yosher, relative to the occupation that you do Torah mitzvahs, which is the half a shekel that comes in a straight way. Basically, value to that value, you have shachas hakoyach litfila of avodah shebelev ade machzis shekel abei will be the hamshacha to daven and to serve the Eibusher to the second machzis shekel. Basically, as we said, the Ohr comes down in 2 places. It comes down in Torah mitzvahs, comes down in Zohar, also comes down to Malchus. But they're 50-50, it comes down to the same. Chesed mischalik lebeis b'chinas, I started before from the Eitz Chaim over there. The chesed splits into 2 levels. B'shva achas, one equal, and the ho talya. The one hinges on the other one. So you're going to get hamshacha melamayla to help you daven to the same amount of hamshacha that you get down from Torah mitzvahs that you bring down. V'zeu k'moshul beis kapis meznayim. That's like the 2 sides of the scale. That one side, one plate descends. So basically, it means you're going to get that much hamshacha, so then you'll have that much alot. You get an equal hamshacha. So b'meila, how much hamshacha you get, that's how much alot you're going to get. So you're going to get both the same because it both of this is split half on this side, half on the other side. As written elsewhere. So what does it mean? They should all give those over al apikudim. So over here, he's talking about is Ramach. It should all give Ramach pikudim de Malka. Should give machzis hashekel. So who bechinas eser sviras the Ohr Yosher. So the shekel is what esrim geira hashekel. Half a shekel is 10 geira. That's yud. So that's the 10 sviras of Ohr Yosher. That's the half a shekel which comes on one side. Hanimshach milmaylo adekim ramach mitzvah sesachulu. When you do the 248 mitzvahs, you're mamshich on one side, and therefore, through this also you get machzis hashekel lenukva. You get also to nukva, lahagdila keser the nukva b'chinas b'chol meidecha, to increase the keser of nukva should be b'chol meidecha. So, who's on the one side of the plate? One side of the plate is Malchus, is the person, is Knesset Yisrael. That's the on one side of the plate. That's the plate of Malchus, and on the other plate is basically Zoh. So you have Zoh on one plate, and Malchus on the other plate, and you're mamshich the mitzvahs. The mitzvahs, once you're mamshich from the Chesed, it comes down equally to both. It comes down half of the plate of Zoh. The hamshocha becomes through Torah mitzvahs. But the hamshocha gets divided into 2 parts. One part is the Torah mitzvahs, and the other part is the davening, basically on the other side. And the more you bring the Torah mitzvahs, the more hamshacha you get on the other side, a half of hamshacha, so that you can elevate relative to the other side, so that your davening or your plate, which is below, once you increase the other plate, your plate goes up higher. So instead of before being just b'chol levavcha or b'chol nafshecha, now you're b'chol meidecha, because you got that extra increase from the Torah mitzvahs that you brought down on the one side, brought the other side. In the pasuk over there, it doesn't talk about a scale one. It just says you give a half a shekel. It doesn't talk about two halves. The whole explanation of the Eitz Chaim that he explained over here is that there's two scales, and one scale is hinged on the other scale. And when you give more here, you get more there, and it's elevated everything else. But in the pasuk, it just talks about giving a half a shekel. It doesn't tell you about any other half a shekel. It thinks like you're only giving a half a shekel. So he says that's lifhi pshutei. But va'afal pi shel lifhi pshutei koi rak al nisinis machzis achas lekarbonis. Simply, it's only talking about giving one half for karbonis. Mekomakein hadrosha tidresh al beis bechinas machzis. We're going to still expound it on two halves, even though you're just giving one half of the pasuk. So we're talking about two halves, bechinas kad chulu on both sides. So all of a sudden, here we're saying the Torah talks about what? One giving of a half a shekel. Here we're talking about two, one on this side, one on the other side. Okay. I think this stands for Nira Lahois, or Nirli. Not sure who writes this. Is this the Alter Rebbe? This is Tzemach Tzedek. Who writes? But he adds over here from a different explanation. He's going to say, so the bottom line is, what are these two halves of the two halves? They both come from above. But one of them comes from above to bring up the below, and one of them comes from above just to give you the hamshacha. One is a pnimius, and one is a makif to bring the halah. But what are the both hamshachas? They're both mad. They're both mayim b'churim. They're both milmayla lamata. The two halves are milmayla lamayla. Milmayla lamata. They're both milmayla lamata. But one is in zoh to come down, and one is to keser malchus to bring up. But they're both coming from above. In another minor, it says no. It says one is coming down and the other one is coming up. See, here we're saying it's for the purpose of coming up. Why is the mind before? Why is it coming? It says Jerusa, the le'ela to bring up, but it's lepoil mamish. What are the two halves? They're both coming down. One is for the purpose of coming down, and one is to bring up. But they're both coming down. That's the two machzis. But in the other minor, it says that one is actually coming down and one is going up, like the actual scale. So he says, over there it says differently. That the one machzah shekel is the mayim dechurim hanimshach leoirer hamayim nukvim. It's the mayim dechurim that extends to arouse the mayim nukvim. Gam levareroi b'chochma yisbiriru. So basically, it is a half a shekel that is leoirer haman to wake it up. So the first one is to wake up basically, it's like the second one by us, that becomes the first one over there, is the mad, is to wake up the man. And that's the sarusa del leila, to wake up the sarusa del. And the second machzis is the sarusa del tato. V'achkach machzis ha-shekel truma zo man atzmei. That's the mayim nukvim itself. The elevation itself is called the machzah shekel, and that's the bechinas vavdala de milu yud. When you say yud, the 10, so yud has spelled vavdalet, so that half is the 10 of the milu yud, which is the mayim nukvim. I guess because the Amilui means that it's included in the Yud. You have the Yud. That's included because the Yud that brings down brings about the Vav Dalet, the other 10 from the Lev Machine is Shom Barichas. And this way the mashal is very simple, it's literally. Because one goes down and one goes up, versus here they're both going down to the purpose of bringing up. The one goes down from top to the bottom, the Mayim Duchurim. The other one that goes up, that's the Mayim Nukim. Over here it has to be the base. Over here it must be for sure that the mount comes down on one side, goes up from the other side. Since the descent of one side, that's the Mayim Duchurim. That is the Isarus Elo, which is Mavada Mayim Nukim, which is our Kafa base. For sure it's there. He says, according to that explanation over there, it's very simple because over there it's a cause and effect directly. The Mayim Duchurim wake up the Mayim Nukvim. So to the extent that the Mayim Duchurim wake it up, that's how much the Mayim Nukvim go up. And that's exactly fitting. You don't need any. Over here we're saying it comes down here, it comes down there to wake up, but it comes down Chesed split over there. It's very simple. Or lefi mashekosavti, or lefi mashekosu. The way it's written over here, the Aliyas Kav Beis though I'm shocha b'fnei atzma. That's not the Machatzis HaShekel. That's something else. That's the Mayim Nukvin. That's the Sarber Amshocha. That's not the Amshocha. So Amshocha Menatma Adei Machzis HaChasodim HaYedim Nukvin. Through the half of the Chesed comes onto the Nukvin. V'yidis HaKav Aleph and the other descent of the Kav Zeu Al Yidei Machzis HaChasodim HaYedim Luzot. So basically, they both are getting. How come the scales are equal? Because they're both scales are getting the equal amount. The Zog gets one amount on that side, Nukva gets one on the other one. That's why they stay equal. It's not because the one raises the other one. They both get the exact same amount. Separate. It's separate shochat. Al de machzach sod me'edin Nukva. It is the kav achas. Zeo idea machzach sod me'edin Luzot. That would be the occupation of davening of the Torah mitzvahs. So you have the two separate kafim, two separate scales, sides of the scale. V'ulam ava became emes. Still, it's true. Shlepi erech yedidas hakafa achas kafa alis kafa base. But it's still that they still get the same amount, even though it's two separate amshochas. Even though these are two separate amshochas, but how much does the other scale get based on the one this scale? The scale gets split into 5. Ela mishum the v'ho talya kinal, but they're still hinged one on the other. I said before, v'zo inyan shachesed nekla l'zov v'nukva bas achas chulu. Before he said in the Priyas Chaim that the zov v'nukva it gets split at once. So that means at the same time, because of the equal amshocha, that means they're hinged on one or the other. As much as you get Torah mitzvahs, that's how much you get on the other scale to nukva. As much as Zog gets, that's the nukva gets. So, but Bechlal, the Gemara brings down that what is this over here? Why is it not in number 20? The Gemara in Nedorim brings down over there that the Gemara says basically, when you see the water, if a drop comes down from the bottom, there's 2 drops come from the top. Two drops come from the bottom. So you have rain, and then you have from the underneath, from underground. So the Gemara says basically that for every drop from above, you have 2 drops from below. Basically, what would mean that you got to work twice as hard from below in order to get one drop from above. So, or the reverse, or the drop that comes from above brings up 2 drops from below. But here we say that it corresponds. So he says, Ki hamayim dechurim hama'orer man, the mayim dechurim that arouses the man, the mayim nukvim, u'bechinas tipa echas levad. That's just 1 drop. The hainu is oiderus kloli la'oiderus hamakabel. That is just a general 1 drop to arouse the recipient. In other words, it's not split in any specific. There's a bekama, and the recipient gets aroused in different ways. That's why it says 2 milmata. This is usually 2 things, which is Abba and Yira. So that is 2 drops that come up from below. So that means the Oiris Milmailo brings the Abba V'yir. So Kisisa as Rosh B'nai Yisrael. So what does it mean, Sisa as Rosh B'nai Yisrael? Shemamshich Keser the Nukva B'chinas B'chol Meidecha. How does he raise them? By bringing them the Keser of Nukva to bring them B'chol Meidecha. That comes through the half a shekel, which is Chatzi HaChesed. That's the half a chesed that goes to the feminine, which is Knesset Yisrael, which is Malchus. Now, Livkudeya. Now he says it is Livkudeya. Livkudehem is going to Trites now means to places that are lacking. Like it says, David's place, it wasn't there at the party, so it says his place was missing. Why was it missing? Because he didn't show up. He ran away from the king. He was afraid. So here it means where it's missing. I was going to say the same idea we learned in the previous Maamar, that when you come to a higher level, there's all of a sudden there's a chesed. But inyan shayidei ari dochel kurban. So you have the ochel ari dochel kurbanin, which is the amshacha milmayla, shenasa birur betachlis, which the total birur becomes. So what happens? So you sort out, so the bad separates and it leaves. It turns out, who hora nechsar menafshois menafoshes shohoyo nidbak b'sham tchila. So he's no longer in the soul that he was beginning. So what happens? You have a soul. They had a mixture of toiv and ra. They were elevated. The ra went away. So what do? They're separate. Ukemoi has goy sigim ekesef. The pasuk says that you remove the imperfections from the silver. So when you sort out, you elevate it, you get rid of the ra, so you stay only good. That's what he said before. Forgive us. Why? Because once we get to the place of Aridach al-Kurbani, we come to the Amida. So over there, we get rid of the imperfections. Came out of Shabbos, and likewise this is an Erev Shabbos. So it says very interesting here. Shuhu aliyas hamalchus miknipas noiga. Erev Shabbos, Malchus comes up in Knipas noiga. So what happens? V'oz gam hanoiga rotzelalis. So noiga also wants to go up because Malchus comes up from Knipas noiga. So noiga also wants to go up. V'nimshach shalheves milamaylo. So there is a flame. This is the Kabbalah, that there is a flame that comes from above. Levatishba, to bang on her. Nifred hara de noiga. So the bad of noiga is separated. It's like you're cleaning out the rug. So you're banging up the rug, you're getting rid of the shmutz. So now the rug is clean. The good of the nega goes above, and the bad gets pushed down to below. That happens on Erev Shabbos. And that's why we take a bath on the mitzvah to wash yourself on Erev Shabbos, to get rid of that negative. That's why there's a mitzvah to wash one's face, hands, and feet in warm water Erev Shabbos. There's at length discusses it. Similar is what happens machzis hashekel, which means that we are raising now the level of the level of the malchus, level to bring it up to the higher level. So this is also brings down, should be the elevation. So that's why we get rid of. That is the idea of lifkudehem, to the lackings, meaning to get rid of. I guess in this context it means lifkudehem of the noiga, of the ra. The chitzonim, get rid of them. And then the pasuk continues, "V'nosnu ish kofer nafsho." Pirush kofer. So it says now a very interesting thing. You have to redeem yourself, because when you're getting rid of these clippers like that, the noiga like that, you got to appease them a little bit. You got to give them a kofer nafsho. Kofer nafsho means you're redeeming your soul. Redeeming your soul, you have to give something in order for you to get your soul, in order to save your life. So, like, you pay money, and instead of you losing your life, you pay the money. So the money takes the place. So, pirush kofer hu hapidyon shepoy de nafshe mishachas. That's the redemption which you redeem your soul from the grave, from the shachas. The whole point of anytime you say redeeming, the idea is you give something instead of your soul. It's not just that your soul is saved, but you give something in place of your soul. So that's the money. You give the money, and the money becomes the pidyon nefesh, becomes the kofer nafesh, becomes the redemption. Like we say in the pasuk, we do it in the we say it in the Yom Kippur, every Yom Kippur when we do kaparos. It's you call the pasuk pedo eyu meredes shachas motzosi kofer. Redeem him from descending into the grave. I found a substitute. I found a pigeon. So this says. So in other words, when you take away from the clippers and you throw them away, you got to give them something too. That's the kofer. You got to give them. You give them the smoke. When you do the karbonis, which is the sorting out the good from the bad, in order to appease the other side. It's giving them a place so they can have some nurturing also from the korban. That is from the smoke of the arrangement. They get from the smoke. You know, you burn the korban, but you give them something to smoke. That vitalizes them to give them their food and their what they need. And they are appeased the fact that you give them willingly. And that way they won't criticize for the side of Kedusha being overpowered. And the korban goes up as a pleasant aroma to the highest level. So through this sorting out of the good from the bad, Yunika. You give them a little bit of Yunika, you give them a little bit to smoke him. But how much good from the bad? It is doubled, triple, endlessly. A little bit that you give them, so you have a little bit. You have to give them. You give them, you sort out the but mostly the toiv goes up. V'zo came produced, that becomes like a redemption. Because you are redeeming the good and you're bringing it up in Shviras HaKelim. You still need to give something else that should go in its place, lefayis, in order to appease. That's a little bit of nurturing from the smoke of the maracha. But it's considered very little, a drop, and it's considered like nothing relative to the good that has been sorted out and redeemed from the ra. Similar is the idea of the goat that has been sent away to Ksiv. And also the sin of the person is atoned. I think so. By the Soid HaMishtalech, he becomes a what? He becomes a substitute. So you give them, I guess you give to the Chitzonim, you give them that soid, you give them that goat. So they're happy with that, and then the person becomes atoned. That's the exchange. When you say when you say this is my exchange, then it becomes my atonement. So his soul remains clean to go up to Hashem, and there's no stranger with him, there's no klippas, there's nothing there. You give him the klippas, you give them the soyer, you give them the osham, you give them the tarnagoil, you give them the chalifosi, and then you can be ready to go up to Hashem. The same thing is here in our discussion. When you bring up the man of the nukva, so where do they get? They get from the leftover, which is the shalia, that's the sack of the baby. The dam nidus chulu, that's the blood of nidus. But then the good part of it becomes a baby. So the junk gets separated and thrown out. That's given to the klippas, the Yunika, and the rest goes up. And now he's going to go very interesting from a Gemara in Sanhedrin, very Rashi over there. We'll leave this for next time. But anyways, this is still complicated, but I find it very interesting. Okay.